So, Avengers Age of Ultron isn't my least favorite Avengers movie anymore. Who would have fucking thought? So, I went to the midnight premiere of Avengers Endgame yesterday, and I did not like it. Like, at all. There are a couple of scenes that I really enjoyed. Like, I was in the theater yelling and screaming and gripping the arms rest. I was so excited. But on the whole, I did not enjoy the movie, and I think that it's really bad. Like, they massively fucked up the movie, and not only that, but I feel like they ruined a lot of characters, and this sort of ruins even the other movies, okay, that came before Endgame, because the character development went to shit, and I don't know what to say. Really, I was prepared to be disappointed in some ways. There were a couple of things that I wanted that I knew I wasn't gonna get, but this is on a new other level of fucked up, okay? It's really bad. I I think that I'm going to proceed in this way. I'll talk about the bad, the worst, and the worst. I wanted to start with the last couple of minutes of the movie because I think that those minutes are what really ruined the whole thing for me. But I want to start with the bad, which is the narrative structure and the rules they set up for this movie, because those rules affect my understanding of the ending, and so I'm gonna talk about those first. Um, Obviously, this is going to be a review full of spoilers, so if you haven't watched the movie yet, please don't watch this, okay? Or if you want to get spoiled, go on. First of all, the couple of scenes that I really liked, because it has to be said, I really enjoyed those scenes, are basically the ones where Steve leaves Mjolnir, and there is like the cinematography was really good, because one thing I will say for the Russos is that they are good directors. And there was this scene by the end of the movie, and by end I mean like 40 minutes until the end, because it's really long. Steve is all alone because the original Avengers that are with him battling Thanos are kaput, and Thor is on the ground, Iron Man is on the ground, the others are still trying to get out of the Avengers compound that Thanos exploded, okay? And so Steve is alone, and there's this beautiful white shot of his silhouette in shadow. There's the sun at his back, and it's covered by the dust and the detritus, and then there's the whole army of Thanos on the horizon, and it's just a beautiful shot. I was like, oh my god, this is amazing. Okay, so there were a couple of things that I liked, but on the whole it was just a mess. It was a mess, plot wise. I came out of the theater with a headache, because maybe I'm stupid, but I think that it just wasn't easy to follow. I mean, not the story per se is pretty linear, actually, but they set up rules for time travel that it looks like they didn't follow, or they followed but only in certain cases and not in others. Because basically, at the very start of the movie, Thanos is killed, okay? Is on this planet, and he is basically tending his farm, and you can see that he's hurt, he's He size Earth because he used the gauntlet to destroy the gems. Okay, so he used the gauntlet to destroy the gems. The gems are there aren't any more gems. Okay, so the Avengers go to him, they want to defeat him, and they want to take the gems so that they can snap back the people that he killed. But they can't do that anymore. And so they're left with nothing. 5 years pass, and Ant-Man is finally out of the quantum realm. And he only spent 5 hours there, so he's like, wait, why can't we use the quantum realm to travel through time and retrieve the gems, and then we can snap all those people back to life? And so they're like, okay, yeah, let's do that. So they do that. And there's this scene between Scott and Rhodes and Bruce, where Bruce tells them that all those rules that are in place in movies like Back to the Future or the Terminator saga, etc., etc., don't work in reality. And he says that basically everything that they change in the past is not gonna affect their future. Which is like, okay. I'm confused, but I'm still following, okay? So basically, as I understood it, everything they do in the past is going to affect the multiverse in the sense that everything they do will create an alternate reality in which that choice produces an effect, but it's not going to change anything in their timeline, which I'm gonna call timeline A, right? Okay, so they go into the past, and they fuck up, obviously. They fuck up, and Bruce talks to Tilda Swinton, and she tells him that he has to put the gems back into the exact place and time they took them, otherwise that timeline is gonna get fucked. Okay, so by the end of the movie, we see that, for instance, Loki in the first Avengers has escaped with the Tesseract, so we can assume that Loki is now using the Tesseract, the space jam, to escape and not be captured and be put in prison on Asgard. But that it's in a different universe. In our universe, is still going to Asgard's prison, and then everything that happens in the Dark World still happens. And for instance, Nebula dies because Nebula from the future shoots Nebula from the past, but Nebula from the future doesn't die because, then again, something that happens in the past doesn't affect the future. So it's not like the grandfather effect, okay? Okay. What I don't understand is this. Why, at the end of the movie, Steve is still in timeline A? And then I'm going to talk about this in a little while, because the worst is about Steve, obviously. So I'm going to talk about it a little more. That being said, I really don't understand how they could be so stupid. I mean, the rules that they set up for this time travel business are counterintuitive, because obviously, if you change something in the past, the future changes. Obviously, it's like in Days of Future Past, or the new Star Trek movies, or whatever. In Back to the Future, when Martin goes back to the past, he creates an alternate reality in which his family is not made of losers. Okay, and it's not a time travel technique that I particularly enjoy. I prefer the circular narrative, like when in Prisoner of Azkaban, Hermione and Harry go back to the past. In that case, they don't create an alternate reality. Everything that they did, it's because they are doing it right now, and it doesn't change anything, basically. about the future. It's just one continual, river of time. I don't know how to say this, but I could maybe be fine with one alternate reality if that was explained in some way. But in this case, there are a lot of alternate realities, and none of them are explained. And I feel like in certain cases, this is just bad writing, because you can't pretend that the viewers are going to write the story for you. Like, I cannot I cannot spend my time coming up with theories as to why, for instance, Loki is going to I don't know, have his own TV series, because in Endgame he took this Tesseract, because it's an alternate timeline. So we're not actually going to see him in Earth, what is this, 616, I think. It just doesn't work for me. Yeah, I don't think that's a good way to write a story. I'm not saying that you should answer all the viewers' questions. That's not it. You have to leave space for interpretation, but at the same time, I think that in some cases you do have to answer those questions, because they are important for character development, as is in the case of Steve at the end of the movie. Okay, so that's my first concern with the movie. My second concern and my third are more character related. I think that this movie does a great disservice to a lot of characters, but in particular to Thor and Steve, which coincidentally are my two favorite characters. So thank you for that. Basically, when I heard that Taika and Chris Hemsworth weren't okay with how the Russos dealt, and obviously McFeely and Marcus dealt with Thor in Avengers, I was skeptical, because yeah, okay, I loved what they did with Thor in Ragnarok, because I think that movie is the best of the three Thor movies as far as Thor character development is concerned, and even Loki's. But at the same time, there's this really great moment in Infinity War when Thor is talking to Rocket, and he says that he lost a lot of people, and Chris acted that so beautifully. So I was like, okay, yeah, maybe he's not the super smart, super compassionate person that was in Ragnarok, because but I don't feel like he's totally ruined. And then I saw this movie, and I'm like, oh my god, I was so mad at Joss Whedon for what he did with Thor in Avengers, especially the first Avenger, because he basically treated him like a dumb jock. But I would take that 10 times over this. And like, it was maybe funny in the first minute, but then the jokes kept on coming, and they completely ruined the character. I mean, this is Thor we are talking about. It's not a junky Australian dude. Like, are you fucking serious? And I feel so bad for Chris and for Taika, because they really ruined all the artwork and the layout they did for the character in Ragnarok. I mean, okay, you lost everyone, and we know that, and we understand that you are sad and depressed. Okay, they could have treated his alcoholism, because that's what it is, as, something to develop the character even further, like they did with Iron Man. But instead they used it as for cheap jokes, and that's it. And then he has this moment with his mom, with Frigga, and even then you can see that Chris is not really putting any work into it. It's just so flat. And I'm like, you're seeing your mom again when you thought you lost her, and you are still losing her because the events of the Dark World still happen. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm still gonna go drink a beer. What? And okay, this was something that concerns a lot of people, even um, in the first Avengers: Infinite War. Um, those fat jokes, were they really so necessary? I don't think so. I don't really think so. And there is a moment by the end of the movie when Thor seems like is back to his old self again. He takes a Stormbreaker, he changes his armor, and he looks like a Viking. And I was really happy about that, but I still feel it's not enough, especially because by the end of the movie he jumps on the ship with the Guardians, and there's this rivalry moment between him and Star-Lord, and it's for cheap laughs, and it's not funny at all, in my opinion. It's just not. They had this same banter in Infinity War, and I get it. Like, it was their first meeting. There were a little bit of rivalry, especially on Peter's part, but the joke in this movie is so dragged on and dragged on. They really milked the cow, and it's not funny anymore after a while, you know. So this is my concern with Thor. Also, in the comics and in the first movies, Thor's has always been one half of a whole, because he was always linked to Loki. But now Loki is definitely dead, and we don't know if we'll ever see him again in this timeline. And what is Loki without Thor? And what is Thor without Loki? So going forward, are we going to see Thor, working with the Guardians and just be the comic relief? I don't want to see that. I absolutely do not want to see that. I really hope that Taika and Chris do another movie together so that they can rebuild this character, because at the moment it's awful what they did to him. Okay, it's awful. And now let's go on talking about the worst. Like, for me, the worst part of Avengers Endgame was the end. Like, I've always been Team Cap. I liked Iron Man in the first movies, but then they changed his character. I didn't like the direction they took him, and so I wasn't Team Iron Man per se, but I cried during his last scenes, and especially like when he said, "I am Iron Man." Like, I said it with him because it was such an iconic moment. And this is something that I speculated about, and I actually got it right. He dies in front of Peter, and I thought that it was tragically beautiful, because he's his father figure, and in Infinity War Peter died in his arms, so it was sort of beautiful that he died in Peter's arm this way in this movie. So I was really upset about that, even though, like, I thought I would be a fountain by the end of the movie, and I was not. Which is, I think, is saying something, because I cry for everything, and this movie didn't get me to be emotional at all. Like, I was a little bit teary-eyed when Natasha and Okai had their moment, and when Tony died, but then I was like, And this movie is supposed to be the goodbye to a lot of beloved characters, and it's supposed to give us closure after 10 years of movies, and I was not emotional at all, and I think that this is a great feeling on the movie's part. But like I was saying, I think that the worst part is what they did to Steve. I love Steve's character. I think he's the best character of the MCU. I think that his movies are the best movies of the MCU. Captain America: The Winter Soldier is a masterpiece of its genre, right? It's really, really a great movie. I think it's the best of the MCU. And I find it very, very difficult to understand how the same team that brought us Winter Soldier brought us this. Like, how can you massively fuck up a character that you have written for the past 10 years and that you are supposed to know in and out? Like, how can you not understand him? How can you be so oblivious? Like, Steve Rogers is a depressed, suicidal man that he was finally finding his place in the world. He wasn't a man out of time anymore. He had found a family, like Natasha did, okay? He found a family, people who supported him. He had Natasha, he had Sam, he had Bucky back finally. He had something to live for, and I believe that a character should grow during the span of, movies. And if you start with a depressed character that kills himself because his best friend is dead, and then he comes back, but then it's not him anymore, and so you are ready to let him kill you, okay? And then you find the strength in yourself to move on because he's back, and you are finally here in the present, and you can do something with your life, okay? The end of the character, the logical end of the character, is not going back to the past. It's not. Like, Peggy Carter is amazing. She had an amazing series because Agent Carter was, because they cancelled it, but was a beautiful series of a woman in the 1940s that managed to create something for herself. Peggy wasn't the shadow of Steve anymore. She built something for herself. And she wasn't just the love interest anymore. She found the love of her life. She had 3 kids. She moved on. And okay, in Winter Soldier, she says that Steve changed her life. And it is true. It is true. But then she moved on. And Steve moved on. Okay? He moved on. So why go back to that time? You obliterated the character development of both Peggy and Steve. And now the time travel theory comes back because, okay, Steve has to go back in time to put the gems in their rightful time and place. And then he has only one vial to do so. So we are in timeline A, correct? So it goes back in the past, and he marries Peggy and has a family with him and with her. Sorry. And I really, really wish that they didn't have Sharon kiss him in Civil War, because now that's totally fucked up. We know it was for the no homo, but it's fucked up nonetheless. It's even more fucked up now. So he goes back in timeline A and marries Peggy. So the events of timeline A, like what happens in Winter Soldier, shouldn't change as per the rules established at the beginning of the movie. Like what you do in the past doesn't affect this current timeline, because we now have an alternate timeline that we will call timeline B, where Steve is married to Peggy. And we can assume that he tells her that S.H.I.E.L.D. is being taken over by Adra, and that his best friend of a lifetime is being tortured and brainwashed by them. We can only assume that. But by the end of the movie, Steve comes back in timeline A. So, there are two possibilities. Okay, two possibilities. Either this is a giant plot hole, because Steve shouldn't be there. He should be in another timeline. He's growing old in timeline B. Or, and this is even more fucked up, there are basically two Steves present on Earth at the same time for the last 70 years. One is under ice, the other is with Peggy. And then we don't know at which point in time he went back to her. We can assume it was the 30s, but then again, in Winter Soldier, she said that he married another man, which Steve had saved in Asano, and then in Agent Carter we know that it's Sousa, and they had 3 kids, so she then divorced him and married Steve. Steve knew what Hydra was doing, and it did shit all, because the Ancient One said that it couldn't interfere with the current timeline. And can you imagine a more fucked up end for a character like Steve Rogers than sit idly by as Nazi take over the world and torture his best friend? I cannot, because it doesn't make a lick of sense. Like, Steve Rogers would destroy everything in its path in order to save people he loves. Like, he did so in the first movie, he did so in the second, in the third. He does that all the time. There isn't a rule that Stephen Grant Rogers would follow if it meant that it would prevent him from saving people. So, either this is a plot hole, or they did Steve so dirty. This is the greatest disservice that they could ever make to his character. You cannot tell me that Steve Rogers wouldn't fight tooth and nail to rid the world of Hydra. You basically turned him into a fucking Nazi because he's complacent to the regime. Are you fucking kidding me? So, I'm sorry, I talked for 30 minutes. I am so angry about this movie. For me, it's even worse than movies that I didn't like Iron Man 3 or Age of Ultron, because yeah, they fucked up the characterization in that movie, but at least I could be like, well, whatever, I'm gonna forget this movie ever happened. But like, this was supposed to be a gift to the fans, and don't tell me that writers shouldn't do fan service, because fuck you, okay? This is the end of a franchise that has been with us since 2008. Of course, it had to be a gift to the viewers, and you ruined so badly 2 of the cornerstone of the original Avengers. No, you cannot do that. You absolutely cannot do that. It's totally fucked up. So I don't know if I'm going to watch the movie again in the theater. I wanted to, because I wanted to understand a little more the whole thing with the time travel business, but I honestly believe now that it's just one giant mess, and really they didn't care about the characters that they had, and they fucked it up so badly. I don't want to give them my money anymore. And I feel like it's ruined now. Like, I'm always going to watch the movie at this point and wonder what the hell went wrong. I know where we are going to get. And like, sorry. I'm really fucking sad at the moment. I wasn't the greatest fan of Infinity War because I think that it doesn't have a subtextual level, so after a couple of views it doesn't tell much. But it's a way better movie than this one. Honestly, it's just way better than this one. Because at least then, okay, there were a few moments between the characters, but they didn't ruin them. This one just fucks it up. Black Widow is dead. Gamora is not Gamora anymore. She's just another Gamora, and probably she's going to end up with Peter, with Star-Lord. But I don't know how. Because, I mean, it's not the same person. It's just not. I think it's a little creepy, you know. And I don't know what to say about Steve. The only thing I'm grateful for those last minutes is that Falcon is going to be in a new Captain America, and I'm really happy about that. I mean, it was always going to be him or Bucky, and I would have been happy with both, obviously. I loved Bucky Cap in the comics, but I also really appreciate this choice, so I can't wait to watch Winter Soldier and Falcon, Falcon and Winter Soldier, sorry, because I'm really, really excited about that. Those are two of my favorite characters, so I'm on the edge of my seat, and I can't wait to watch that series. But that ending wasn't right for Steve Rogers, and this movie wasn't right for Thor. It was just a great disservice to both their characters, and it was a great disservice to the audience. So I'm going to close now, and I hope you did have a good time watching the movie. I didn't. But I hope that you did find something that you can appreciate about Avengers Endgame, and that you can bring with yourself a good memory of these 10 years that we passed together with these characters. You know what? I want to say something else about Steve, because I'm not over this. Like, when it was time to speculate about, the destinies of the characters, I wasn't overly fond of the theory that Steve was going to sacrifice himself, because I thought that in the previous movies he had made those sacrifices. I mean, he basically killed himself more than once. And I thought that it would be bad. I mean, it would be in bad taste to have him sacrifice himself yet again. Yes, it would be a heroic suicide, but at the same time, a heroic suicide is a suicide nonetheless. It's just a passive ideation of a suicide. And I thought that the character, again, was being developed, and that Steve didn't feel like a man out of time anymore, and he has a support group, and he was moving on with his life. So I didn't want him to kill himself to save people, and I thought that Tony was going to be the one to do the heroic sacrifice, which happened. But honestly, if I could change one thing about Avengers Endgame in hindsight, it would be this. Like, I would rather have Steve die than have him fuck up his whole character. Like, we knew since the beginning that Chris wasn't going to be in any more movies, and so I've been preparing myself for years, okay, to cry over his dead body. And so I should be grateful that he is not dead. And honestly, my wish for this movie was that he was going to retire and, you know, be an artist. And this is one of those things that, like I said at the beginning of the video, I knew were not going to happen, or they weren't going to happen as I visualized them in my brain, obviously. But he is a soldier, and he's done, okay? He's done his duty, and now it's time for him to finally rest and to pass the shield to someone else. So I was ready to see him retire, but if this is the way that they are going to make him retire, please kill him, because this, and it has been said a lot of times, this is character assassination. So you could have just killed him and it would have been better. Okay, I would have cried and I probably would have been upset, but at least he would have gone off, you know, with a bang, and I wouldn't be here wondering if he really did nothing to save the world and his best friend from Hydra. I really wish he was dead. Can you believe me wanting Steve dead? This is what this movie has reduced me to. I cannot believe this shit. Okay, bye again, guys. I hope you're having a good time, a better time than me. And I hope that your favorite characters didn't get this treatment, because it's not fair. Bye, guys.